Hello and welcome to another breakout session. This is breakout session number 10, and we're calling this one the substitute teacher. If you can remember back when you were a kid and in school when a substitute teacher would show up, it was usually a fun day. So I'm hoping that this day is going to be as much fun. Today we're going to learn about chord substitution. Before I get started, as usual, I want to say hi to all the Guitar League members out there around the country that might be watching today. And again, as usual, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button and the little bell will notify you when we put one up there. And if you like these, I would appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. So I've been trying to figure out how we got from a 3-chord blues progression, like for instance the T-Bone Walkers, they call it Stormy Monday. It's originally had 3 chords. Let's say it was in G, so it'd be G, 7, C7, and D7. How did we get from there to the Allman Brothers and Bobby Blue Band's masterpiece of 12 chords, Stormy Monday? So, and I'm going to put the chords up there for you to see. There's a lot of chords, and how the heck did we get there? And so I want to learn how they did that, why it works, and how you can apply it to other chord progressions. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I took one for the team. You know, I've been reading and studying a lot of theory so that you guys don't have to. And I'm going to try to break this down into simple, understandable little things. It's nowhere, it doesn't even crack the surface of all the different chord substitutions and the theory of it all. It's just, we're going to hit on a few key parts that I think will help you see how you get from a 3-chord progression to a 12-chord progression and have it all work. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about one of the first things I learned, and that is the theory of the secondary dominant chords. Okay, and I call this one taking the fifth. Because what will happen, or how it works, is, let's say that you were in the key of C, and you're going to go to A minor, and you want to substitute a chord in there and make it sound good in between the two. So rather than worrying about the key of C, let's go to the chord that we're going to go to, which is the A minor, and let's take the fifth of the A minor and make it a dominant 7, and that's what's called secondary dominant chords. And these are borrowed chords. You'll see this in a lot. We talked about borrowed chords before, and this is how you borrow them. Okay, so we were going from C to A minor. But the fifth of A minor is E. And we're going to make a 7th out of it, a dominant 7th. So we're going to make it an E7. So it would be. And it's a beautiful progression. And you see that like in Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out. We talked about that. They throw that E7 in there in the key of C. But it's not because it's in the key of C. It's the fifth of the chord you're going to. So that will work over any chord progression. Take the fifth of the chord you're going to, and you can use that in between. A lot of times you'll find that it's the same chord that you just came from, so in that case it's not going to work. But let's say you had say a G to an F. So the fifth of F would be C, and if you make it a C7, So it'd be, and you can see that almost resolves to that, from the C. No, we're doing from G to C7 to F. Okay, so I call that taking the fifth. So there's a substitution right there that you can do. You can take the fifth of the next chord in the progression, make it a dominant 7, and play it, a secondary dominant chord. Next thing I learned was that there are chords in a key that have very similar notes to the one chord in the key. So let's say that we're going to be in the key of C for this one too. So the C has a root, a third, and a fifth. Okay. Well, the E minor chord, which is the third of that C, D, E minor. There are notes in that are the same as in C. So the 1, the 3, and the 6 chord, the 1, the 3, and the 6 chord have 2 of the notes that the 1 chord has. So like in the key of C, there's a 1, 3, 5 in the key of C, a root, a third, and a fifth. And the third chord, which is an E minor, has a 3, a 5, and a 7. So there's 2 of those notes, a 3 and a 5. And then the A minor chord has a 6, a 1, and a 3. So again, there's 2 notes, a 1 and a 3 note in those chords. So there's the C, E minor, A minor. So the 1, the 3, and the 6 chord of any key is going to have 2 of the same notes as the 1 chord. So they fit in, they can be substituted periodically for each other or the 1 chord. So that's another type of chord substitution, and that's called tonic chords. The chords that are in the key that have 2 of the same notes as the key note. Okay? Okay, so after the tonic chords, next thing we're going to talk about is the tritone substitution. Okay? Tritones are 2 notes. That are 6 semitones apart, but that's another story. The dominant 7 chord is, the sound of a dominant 7 chord is determined by 2 notes, the third and the flat 7. That's what gives a dominant 7 chord its sound. The third and the flat 7. Well, like there's 2 chords, or there's a second chord for every dominant 7 chord. Let's put it that way. Okay? So there are 2 chords that have the same tritone. Now they might be inverted, but they have the same 2 notes. Okay? And those 2 chords can replace each other. Okay? So let's say that we are going to do a progression, let's say a 2-5-1 progression in C. Okay, so the C is the 1 chord. Okay, we're in the key of C. So in the key of C, G7 would be your dominant 7 chord. That's because it's the 5 chord, right? The 5 chord in a key is always the dominant 7 chord. Okay, and so G7, well, play it way up here so you can just see these 2 notes. This is the third, that has a B and an F in it, another dominant 7 chord that has a B and an F. And in this case, it happens to be a D flat. So that's right here. There's an F and a B. It's right here. Well, how do you find that real fast? Because that would be difficult. You could go to the circles of fifths and figure all this stuff out, but that's not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is whatever key you're in, let's say we are in the key of C. So let's just play a C7 because we're looking for a dominant 7 chord. And we go up a half a tone from the 1 chord. That's the D flat 7. And you can replace the G7 with a D flat 7. It's almost identical. Okay? So that's a really important chord substitution. By the way, the tritones, those 2 notes, they were known as the devil's tones. The devil interval. Back in medieval times, you weren't supposed to play those notes. They were evil. But that's a whole other story. Okay, so you got that idea. So if we're in C, let's say we're doing a 2-5-1 in C, so you'd be like a D minor 7 to a G7 to a C major 7. Well, if we can do a D minor 7 to a D flat 7 to the C major 7, it sounds a lot alike. And when we talk about these 7 chords, I'll say this now so I don't have to repeat it 100 times. You can substitute a 7 chord with a 9 chord because you actually, with a 9, it has a 7 and you're just adding the 9th or 1 octave higher. Actually, that's 2 notes above the octave, the 9th. So if I'm saying D7, it could be D9. Either one of those you can use. Okay? All right. So the point of this whole thing so far is that you can substitute chords for other chords. So let's say that we're back to this tritone thing. We got a G7, a half a tone up from G7 would be A flat 7, right? Okay. Now if we're in the key of G, D7 or D9 is going to be the 5 chord. So watch, if you go C, A flat, C, D9, A flat. See how that sounds very similar? Because of the tritones. So that's how that works, okay? So now you've got a few different chord substitution theories, okay? So if you remember in the last episode, we had diminishing returns. We were using diminished 7th chords. And by the way, diminishing returns every 4 frets. Remember, the same chord returns with the same notes in different order. Okay, that's why it was diminishing returns. A little way to help remember that. Okay, so I talked about then that I was going to show you another chord that had multiple names and multiple uses and had the same fingering as that D diminished 7th chord, or as the diminished 7th chord. And it was this chord. And we're playing this on this up on the 2nd fret just because we can. So if you remember that chord, I'll put a chart up there on this chord. Well, this chord, as I said, has multiple names. So this could be a G7 with a B in the bass. There's no root in this chord. G7. This could be a D minor with the root on the B string. D minor. It's got more of a more dark sound than a D minor up there. But for jazz, it sounds pretty jazzy. It could also be a B minor 7 flat 5 or like a B diminished 7th. Close. So it can have a lot of different names. It just depends on how you're going to use it. Okay? So for me, if I'm calling it a G7, the easy way for me to find it is I just look at like what a G chord would have looked like. You know, here's the G note is up on the big fat string, 3rd fret. Well, right 1 fret, 1 string down, 1 fret over. Because there's no root in this. But that's, and you're playing, again, you're playing the strings you're covering. And this chord is all over, I call it the Stormy Monday chord. It's all over Stormy Monday. It's in all kinds of jazz stuff. It's everywhere. Gypsy jazz, it's all over the place. So this is a really good chord that you can use to substitute in a lot of ways. And obviously if you're moving it up, you can play a whole 1, 4, 5 blues progression with it. So if that's a G, then you come right before the C. That could be a C. That could be a D. So it's just got a really nice jazzy sound to it too. So they use that a lot in Stormy Monday. So just remember one other thing that one of my points is, do we know why they played the particular chords that they played in that Stormy Monday? I don't know that we figured that out, why they played those chords. But I think what I've tried to show you is that there are a lot of chord substitutions that will work. So that all of those chords obviously worked. And the main thing is, if it sounds good, it works. That's the key to music. If it sounds good, it works. So like a substitute teacher, it's usually a lot of fun that day, but then when it comes time to go home, they go, wait, you got I'm going to give you a little homework. So I'm going to give you guys a little homework like a substitute teacher would do. We're going to let's take a chord progression, G, E minor, C, back to G. G, E minor, C, back to G. Pretty simple. Now, if you remember back when we talked about secondary dominant chords, and I called it taking the 5th, let's go ahead and put the secondary dominant chord between each one of those chords. That's your homework assignment. And see what you come up with. So let me know what progression you get there. You can, again, if you would please subscribe, hit the little bell, the like button, but you can also make comments in there. So you could comment, you could tell me what the progression was, or that I'm a dingbat, or whatever you want to tell me. We can communicate through there. I hope you got something out of this session, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks.